آقا گولان دباس، نظریه پرداز و استاد حقوق بین الملل، انستیتوی بین المللی ژنو.
Thank you. After these eloquent speeches that have preceded me, not least that of Madam Rajavi, what I have to say to you will appear very dry and very technical. I was asked to present a legal opinion that I drew up for the people of Ashraf regarding their rights and the obligations of others towards them under international law. And international, it's very important, in fact, to emphasize the legal framework, the international law framework, because international law, of course, can be dismissed as being overridden by politics and diplomacy and so on, but international law has become a universal language, and it is essential in any dialogue with the international community. It's become such an international language that even CNN and Al Jazeera rely on international law terms and dialogues. Now, what this framework is all about. First of all, I would like to underline the protected status of the members of the residents of Ashraf. They are protected under international law, and protected status is very important because from status flows, as I said, rights and obligations. And they are protected on three counts. They're protected persons under the Fourth Geneva Convention. They're protected as long-term resident aliens in Iraq. They are protected as refugees. And also, the camp as a whole has a protected status under international law. And what I would like to underline in particular is the responsibility under international law of all states, in particular the United States, the European Union, and the United Nations, since the situation, the rules and the norms that underlie this legal framework are a matter of concern for the international community as a whole. We have seen a development in international law whereby some fundamental norms, they're fundamental for the interests and the values of the international community as a whole, have been underlined, and therefore they are of concern to every state. And of course in particular to the United Nations. Right, as far as I'll go very, very briefly, obviously, over these different statuses. First of all, status as protected persons under the Fourth Geneva Conventions. I think you've heard quite a bit about that. You've heard that they were granted by the US military in 2004 protected status. Now that means, of course, that the Fourth Geneva Convention came into play, and in particular the prohibition of individual or mass forcible transfers, as well as deportation from the Iraqi territory. Now, one may consider today that the Geneva Conventions are no longer in force. There are some arguments to the effect that there's no longer an armed conflict in Iraq, and therefore the Fourth Geneva Conventions have ended. However, first of all, the Fourth Geneva Convention provides for certain provisions to continue in force, particularly protected persons whose release, repatriation, or re-establishment may take place after the dates of termination of hostilities. And that is one possibility of the extension of the Geneva Conventions. Also, it is important to emphasize that the diplomatic assurance which the Iraqis gave to the United States is very much lacking. First of all, you know that the assurance, and I quote the U.S. State Department, has provided humanitarian assurances on Camp Ashraf, which includes that no resident will be forcibly transferred to a country where there are grounds for believing they will be persecuted or tortured based on their political and so on opinions. First of all, it is important to emphasize that the United States continues to have responsibility even after transfer of the camp to the Iraqi authorities under the Geneva Conventions. They are not, by any agreement, in fact, to give up their responsibilities unless they can be absolutely assured that that protection will continue. In addition, we have seen recently that states have used diplomatic assurances to send so-called suspected persons, suspected individuals, to countries where they do face torture. And the European Court of Human Rights has been extremely clear about that you cannot hide behind the diplomatic assurance, in fact, if you know that these persons will, or that the country which gives these diplomatic assurances will not respect this. Now, the second type of protected status is, of course, as resident aliens, and therefore under human rights law, because human rights law applies in addition to humanitarian law. Now, under the former Iraqi government, the people of Ashraf benefited from certain acquired rights, the right to property and so on and so forth, and Iraq is a party to the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, as well as the economic, social and cultural rights. And under this, I want to quote to you a general comment which the Human Rights Committee made, that aliens have an inherent right to life, they must not be subjected to torture. These are some of the core rights, in fact, but they have the right to liberty of movement and free choice of residence, and they also have the right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion. They also are protected against expulsion under various rules of international law. These are not absolute rules, but they certainly apply to the people of Ashraf. In addition, Iraq has obligations under Security Council resolutions, which has, as you know, insisted that there should be a framework under which human rights of all individuals will be guaranteed in Iraq. And as you know, the Security Council subsequently appointed certain bodies, certain organs, including the Secretary General, entrusted with the establishment of this human rights framework. Now, thirdly, the importance of refugee status. This is extremely important. They clearly qualify under the definition of a refugee, laid down both under the Iraqi constitution, the old constitution, the new one, but also under customary international law. Although Iraq is not a party to the 1951 Convention on the Status of Refugees. And what is interesting is the Iraqi government has given very contradictory statements. On the one hand, as you know, it has threatened to close Ashraf, it has threatened to use all necessary means to rid the camp of its residents, and so on and so forth. At the same time, it has attested to the legal status of the PMOI in Iraq as persons enjoying the right of political asylum. And the latest statement that was made was before the Iraqi representative before the Security Council. Now that, of course, obligates a state under international law. You can use that, of course, in order to ensure that Iraq respects its obligations. One of the most important core provisions is the principle of non-refoulement. That is at the core of refugee status, and that is that you cannot return a person to a place where there is a real risk that their life or liberty may be in danger, or in which they may face persecution on account of race, religion, etc. The principle of non-refoulement is not just a customary law principle, but a very important, very fundamental principle in international law. Finally, as far as protected status, the status of the camp itself. It has a particular status, first under Iraqi law, autonomous status, and also under international law. Military attacks against refugee camps and settlements are clearly unlawful under both refugee law and under humanitarian law. Now, in the face of the threat of renewal of attacks against the people of Ashraf, in the face of all the statements that have been made and so on, and which you have heard from our speakers today, it is essential to underline the responsibility of the international community as a whole. And these are not just words. What I want to point out is that this does lie on legal grounds. In other words, you can hold the international community responsible. First of all, Iraq's responsibility under international law. It incurs what we call state responsibility for all acts in breach of its obligations under the treaties it has adhered to and under customary international law. And Iraq's acts vis-à-vis Camp Ashraf may be qualified by what we call a serious breach by a state of an obligation arising under a peremptory norm of general international law. Peremptory norm are norms which are so fundamental that they cannot be derogated from in any circumstance. The responsibility, of course, of all states, because war crimes, crimes against humanity, certain human rights such as the prohibition of torture and so on, involve all states in a duty to cooperate to ensure the cessation of their breach. And interestingly, in a case which Bosnia brought against Serbia before the International Court of Justice, the court outlined a duty to prevent breaches. The court was then speaking of Srebrenica. And the court particularly said that there was an obligation on those states which had the capacity to influence effectively the situation. And it is clear that the United States has that capacity to influence in Iraq. Concepts of rule of law and responsibility to protect have now become major aspects of international relations. In other words, there is a responsibility, and I quote, that's what the responsibility to protect. It's an emerging rule of international law. There is a responsibility to use appropriate diplomatic, humanitarian and other peaceful means to help protect populations from genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing and crimes against humanity through the Security Council. And not only the United Nations as a whole, not only the Security Council, but UNHCR has a responsibility. There is a call that the UNHCR recognizes or grants collective refugee status. And I would like to point out that during the 2003 war, when many Iraqis fled from Iraq, UNHCR called on all states to grant collective recognition, in other words, to Iraqi refugees. In other words, not to go through individual recognition processes, on the basis that there was an urgency there and on the basis that there was a very large group there. One wonders why UNAMI's mandate cannot be expanded. It's already been expanded. It could be expanded to include further protection of Ashraf. But of course, UNAMI needs protection itself. It had it from the U.S. military forces. The Security Council could call on states to at least provide some form of protection for UNAMI. And clearly, the people of Ashraf fall within the mandate of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. So I will conclude here. I simply want to say that although this may seem a recitation of rules and obligations, it's very important, not necessarily because all the rules, the usual refrain is that these rules cannot be enforced, or that Iraq has sovereignty and therefore domestic jurisdiction, you can't intervene. Number one, this is no longer a matter of domestic jurisdiction. Iraq cannot claim the principle of non-intervention. Human rights and all these violations are no longer recognized as part of domestic jurisdiction. Also, it is important to underline that even where international law cannot be enforced, it is very important to keep rights alive. It is very important to reiterate these rights and to use them as one aspect, of course, of the diplomatic and political mechanisms that will put them into implementation. Thank you very much.